Other three of us are here. The first item on tonight's agenda is a public hearing for a variance request.
Yeah, Leslie Schromm's going to address that item.
Good evening. I don't know if I have David and Michelle Michael in the audience this evening. They weren't certain they were going to be able to come tonight. But this is for a request for a variance from our leak adjustment policy for a hose leak at their property at 50 Roback Drive in La Selva Beach. And what happened is one of our meter readers was on site reading the meter and noticed an extremely high read. So the meter read alerted him that something was going on. He went onto the property and discovered that in the backyard at the back of the property there was a hose that was running. So he left a leak alert and notified the customer to that effect. They contacted us when they received their high bill. And so they are requesting a variance from our leak adjustment policy because under the terms of our policy, something like this is not covered. We specify that in order to receive a leak adjustment, you have to have identified the nature of the leak, and it has to be something that can be repaired to prevent recurring water loss.
Okay. Any questions?
Maybe we should ask the public.
Right. All right, so now it would be time to open the public hearing. Anybody wishes to speak on this item? Seeing none,
I move we close the public hearing.
Second.
it's been moved and seconded to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And now it comes back to the board for discussion.
Well, we've never done this before, and this would set a precedent. I don't see any rational reason to do that.
I don't either.
So a question, when you talk about notifying the person, what do we do to notify?
So at the time the customer service field representative was on site and read the meter and discovered the leak, they left a door hanger at the premises, alerting the family that they had a leak at their property. And then we also, when we receive that read back in the office, we send out a leak alert via email and let them know that we have identified a potential leak at their property. In addition, then they get their bill, and it's typically higher than normal.
Okay. And so we didn't know there was a hose on, we just knew that there was a high.
Well, no, he did, the customer service field representative, on the day that he read the meter, discovered that the reason for the water loss was a hose running in the backyard.
Did they turn it off at that point?
Yes.
Good.
And so it was recommended to them that they put a locking hose bib on that unit if it was something that they weren't going to be using to protect against this type of thing
Right.
happening in the future. And I think what they did instead was they just removed the handle at the top of the spigot.
Okay, any other questions, discussion, motions?
Motion to deny?
I second.
All right, been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? All right, the motion passes unanimously. All right, next is the consent agenda. Are there any items directors wish to remove?
3.6 and 3.8 for me.
Perfect, that's exactly what I wanted. Anyone else?
I believe 3.7 wants to be, there's a discussion from one of the person in the audience that wants to talk about that.
Okay. So there would be items 3.1 through 3.5.
I'll make the motions to approve.
I'll second.
Before we vote, is there any public comment on any of those first 5 consent agenda items? (3.1) through 3.5.
Thank you. Becky Steinbruner. I just want to comment on the production reports. I'm really happy to see that the levels have gone way down, and that's got to be due to the great conservation efforts of your customers.
Yep.
And but I do want to just note that production has gone back up in 2016 and 17. And that's probably because the governor chose to end the drought status. So I don't know what can be done to help really have people really understand that the groundwater is not connected to the drought. But anyway, I just want to congratulate your users on a fine job of conservation. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so it's been moved and seconded to approve item 3.1 through 3.5. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, that carries. So we go to item 3.6, which is the What's on Tap newsletter. You had a comment?
I did. On page 38 of 208, I'm glad to see that we're bringing out some success stories. However, the last paragraph is particularly important. It's not, and people tend to read through these things and get tired halfway through and stop. And I think the last paragraph should be, perhaps reversed, so it's, white letters on blue background or something, because that's important for people who don't care about the minutiae of particular places, so they should see that.
Mm-hmm.
The box about the state still offering the rebate.
Exactly.
That's a good idea.
And a few little changes on page 40. On the left-hand column under water main flushing, I would say the traditional method, instead of used, wasted a lot of water, ... And on the right-hand paragraph, I think you want to have treatment plants instead of treatments plants.
Oh, yeah, I missed that.
And then I'm not sure that most of our customers understand what a well casing is. So if you could just say repairing wells, that would get the idea across that really is important. And do I have anything else? No, those two.
Okay. Anyone else have any other comments? I have one just on page 39 at the first thing about the new mobile learning center. I just wondered if on the second line where it says to help educate our community about the proposed Pure Water Soquel project. I know below it documents that it's being evaluated, but I just want to make sure that people understand that's not a done deal. Okay. Any other comments? Anyone from the public on this What's on Tap newsletter?
Yes, thank you, Becky Steinbruner. A lot of people go by Aptos Village Project and the post office, and now that Valencia Road's open, a lot more are going to go by. And I think that it would be good to include an update on the Granite Way well. We all saw what was going on there last winter when you were drilling, and I get a lot of questions asked, what is going on with that? And so as your district's newsletter, I think some sort of an update about the Granite Way well would be a good service to your customers and the public. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think that's a fine idea.
Next one,
Yeah.
this one's full.
We'll do it on the next one.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. All right, so then we'll move on to item 3.7, which is the Potbelly Beach main extension.
Good evening. This item is somehow is very tied to two of the will serve letters that you're going to consider tonight, and really we can't act on those two will serves unless this is approved, because there is no water main in front of those houses at this time, or those lots. This item is an extension of an already water main that was installed several years ago by the Potbelly Beach Club. And this is a short 300-foot side chute from that. There's a potential to serve, I believe, 6 homes that are currently on a well. Back years ago, about 18 to 20 homes got off of the same well, and now they're district customers. 2 of the lots at on the bluff are going to propose to connect to the district, and this extension is required for that to happen. It's entirely financed by private applicants. The infrastructure will be basically dedicated to the district when it's done, and we will inspect the installation to make sure it's done per our standards. One of the applicants, Mr. Graves, is here tonight, and he wanted to discuss with you, the board, about potentially a reimbursement policy for this small piece of main. It's not something that we normally do. We extend mains a lot of the time, and if there's a property along that main and they front it, in the future they can connect to it. The difficulty here is that in the future, are we going to be on the hook to keep track of this? And we'd rather not have to do that. Just a couple meetings ago, the board did approve a reimbursement policy for the bigger piece, and that was to the Potbelly Beach Club has control over the easements for this main, and so they wanted to make sure that these new connections would pay the fair share of the larger main that was already installed several years ago. But I want to let Mr. Graves discuss that with you, or at least just have a comment so that you can consider whether you want staff to bring that back to you. The reimbursement policy is not really tied to this at this stage. This can move forward, and that can be done at a later date if you find that that is something you want to do.
All right.
Good evening, members of the board. I'm Stephen Graves. I think you're all pretty familiar with the history, but I'll just briefly describe what's happened over the period of time. When the Potbelly folks came in down below, this was long before I was on the scene, and my neighbor Welly was on the scene. They came in, put the larger main in, and they asked the Upper Bluff people, "Hey, why don't you come on? Let's abandon the well. Let's all get on Soquel Creek water." At that time, the Upper Bluff people said, "No, we like our well, we're not going to do that." So Potbelly did an agreement with them and said, okay, in the future, when you come in, you have to pay the fees, all fees associated with the improvements. And it's the same agreement that you folks approved for their, the agreement between the Potbelly and the Upper Bluff folks regarding the long-term prognosis for water was the same agreement that was referenced in the reimbursement agreement that you guys approved for them. And so when I came on board, I have legal access interest in the well, and I didn't want to do the well. I wanted to go Soquel Creek. I got approval from Potbelly to do a 2-inch line. I could have just done that, but then my neighbor came in and said, "Hey, let's just do this right. Let's do the full main so that we can facilitate better water supply and future build out." At that point, we went to all the Upper Bluff folks, we went to Potbelly, and we negotiated an amazing price for those folks to come in now and said, "Hey, let's do this now. It's a fraction of the cost that it would take doing it later, and we're going to take all the liability for the construction," and they opted not to. So essentially, it's about a $60,000 or $70,000 bill that Tom, Welly, and myself have to pay to put this water in. And I know that you don't normally do this, but in a sense, this is a completion of the project that you've already committed to. And it's not really, we're not asking the water district to broker, to collect funds or anything else. Your reimbursement agreement with Potbelly says, just put staff on alert that when the Upper Bluff folks come in, they say, staff says, give me your letter from Potbelly saying you've been approved. And in this case, it would be a letter from the partnership of Welly and Graves that you paid your pro rata share expense for that portion of the main. We're not asking for easements. It's just simply, here's the construction cost. Everybody who buys in pays for it. And the difference between this and say a normal public improvement in a subdivision is what we're doing really is public benefit from the district's perspective, where we are completing a project so that hopefully the rest of those well users are now able to come on board and get off the well, which is what I think everybody wants. It's just the right thing to do. It's the fair thing to do. We're not taking advantage of everyone. We just want everyone to pay their fair share. And if they can just say no, and then all of a sudden waltz into the district and not have to pay the fee, then that's kind of an incentive to not, to just continue to use the well water. So we would appreciate you directing staff to come back with essentially the same type of agreement that you gave to Potbelly to extend to us.
Thank you. So I was just wondering if the only option, like Potbelly Beach Association paid for the initial main extension too, so that was also not district funded. So just to make that clear. But I also, I need a reminder on how we were involved in in this reimbursement agreement, and whether there are any other options for them to come up with a reimbursement agreement separately of us.
Right, and that is something that's a good question. Right now, even if the other owners want to connect, the other houses up top want to connect, they need to go through Potbelly. So Potbelly does hold the cards. So ideally, Mr. Graves and Mr. Welly could work something out with Potbelly to hold that control for the other homeowners, that they also pay them independent of us. Because right now, if we do what is proposed, we would have to get a letter from Mr. Welly and Mr. Graves, as well as a letter from Potbelly. And I just, it's more project tracking for us. And if it can be done independent of the district,
Right.
we would prefer that. Sure.
Yes, you wanted to answer that
Yes,
question,
please.
but then we'll be done.
Okay, yeah, so I believe there might be a representative here from Potbelly, but they flat out refuse to do that. They don't want to basically, get in the middle of that. They want to get paid for their portion of the main, and they don't really, they're just not going to do it. So that's not, we certainly explored that option, but it's not going
Okay,
to happen.
thank you. Other public comment?
Thank you, Becky Steinbruner. I just have a question. In looking over the material on page 48, under the water capacity fees, Mr. Graves' fees is $16,500. Mr. Welly's fees are $2,588, and there's an asterisk next to that, but there's no explanation of what the asterisk means. So I'd like an explanation of that. And I also wonder if these two users are going to be required to pay the water demand offset fee, because they are, in a sense, a new demand on the system, and it seems like there should be a water demand offset fee that they should have to abide by. Thank you.
Okay, I'll go ahead. Let's go ahead and answer those.
Okay. The asterisk references the line right below that says is qualifying existing development. Mr. Welly is already on the well, and he's already using aquifer water, so that the water demand offsets do not apply to that connection. And there has been an evaluation on what kind of connection fees are associated with those types of situations. Mr. Graves did pay his share of the water demand offsets, and there was no reduction in that, so he's already paid for those.
Thank you. Board? Discussion?
One of my concerns always is setting precedents, and I kind of have a problem with the fact that I voted for this Potbelly reimbursement plan, because it does get us in the problem, as mentioned, that here we're tracking, and I can imagine if this goes forward, I can imagine 2 decades from now, we got wells going and pipes going, and people having to pay this part of this and some of that, and a little bit of this and some of that, and we have to track it all and calculate how much of this main and how much of that main. And so I kind of, my first initial impression is I don't want to go down that road any further than we've already gone. So that's an issue I've got, that us getting in this business is not something I think is in the best interest of the district or its customers, because a lot of time would be spent tracking and handling it, and I'd just soon not do that in general.
Now,
Rochelle?
my understanding is that we're not tracking the money. We're just making sure they get a letter saying that they've paid Potbelly. Is that right?
That's true. We currently have to track that they have a letter that they paid, which we did receive in this instance. Both Mr. Welly and Mr. Graves have paid, or we have a letter from Potbelly saying that they've squared up. But we'd also have to, I believe, if it's a similar agreement, have to make sure that any of the other 4 parcels would also bring a letter from Mr. Graves and Mr. Welly saying they squared up with these 2 gentlemen, and another letter from Potbelly for the other part.
Could we make it so that it's 5 years or 10 years? I mean,
Statute
so
of
it's not
limitations.
too, yeah. What is the statute of limitations?
Or
Whatever we want it to be.
whatever,
Yeah.
I mean,
So somebody can't come in next week and say, okay, we're connecting now.
And how would you choose that length of time?
How old are you?
Arbitrarily.
No.
So this
10
is,
years is typical. I mean, we had a number of them at the county, but I don't know where the logic came from.
okay. I mean, Potbelly, I was on the board when Potbelly was approved, and it is a unusual situation. The fact that they were pumping right at the coast is what compelled me to make it work, so that we could move the pumping inland.
And of course, I talked to Mr. Graves this afternoon, he asked me to call, and he mentioned the fact that, you know, the people currently, it's not that the well was abandoned, rather, most of the folks are off the well, but there are a few still on it. And so this would continue that process. So there is some justification in that sense to do the same thing for this
right,
bit as we did for the other
then the
bit.
well would be completely abandoned
Completely.
if they,
If everybody else got on, I mean, we're only taking one person, Mr. Welly, off that well. And,
Yeah.
indeed, I'd like to see the well unused.
Remember, I don't believe you can take action on this topic
Sure,
tonight.
sure.
We need direction.
We're working, yeah,
Well,
right.
I would, yeah,
yeah, I mean, if we want, we can just
yeah, ask for.
approve or
come
not the main extension agreement first, and then,
back. I'll make the motion to approve the main extension agreement.
Second.
okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
Again, the
unanimous.
same logic of removing water use from the coast to protect the aquifer from seawater intrusion. So, I don't know whether we want to,
I don't know,
do we want
this
to
is
hear
more-
more?
this is whether we want the staff to bring back
Yeah.
this issue of whether we want to get into an agreement, which won't necessarily speed up people coming off the well.
I think it would do the
Matter of-
contrary.
It'd be the contrary.
Contrary, yeah.
Yeah. It's a fairness issue that I understand,
Right.
which is hard, you know. But
Yeah.
not hearing any motions to continue? Okay. Then we will move on. The next is 3.8.
Yeah, the purpose of this memo is to request approval for board members to attend the Santa Cruz Area Chamber of Commerce Community Leadership Visit, August 24th through 26th. And the visit is really about focused on housing and infrastructure around that sort of thing. They expect about 75 people to attend it. I did attend a similar type event about 3 years ago. We went to Santa Barbara, and it was informative from what was learned, and certainly housing is at a precipice of concern, and water has its nexus with that. But also what was extremely valuable was just the time with the other community leaders. I remember the city manager from Santa Cruz and I rode down the bus together, so we had time to chat. Certainly helped our relationship and as we go into toward agreements and things like that. And that's just throughout the entire 3 days. It's a bustling 3 days. You're on and off a bus. You're going in and hearing from different people. It's a knowledge sharing thing, and I think it's a value. Ironically, Shelley headed up a for our organization, participation in the Water Research Foundation study that hasn't been yet released, but the focus of that was water supply diversification efforts integrated with collaboration with land use planning. So they recognize that there needs to be more dialogue between the two just to understand it. And a good example is if we don't take steps to try to work together, you know, the state is handing down mandates. There's legislation right now to amend the law out there that says accessory dwelling units don't need separate water meters if they're adjoining to the house. You can convert a garage and that sort of thing. That's already passed. The legislation that's out there now includes special districts. Special districts were excluded. So that's a state mandate. We have no voice in that at that point once it's passed at that level because it includes districts. So I think this would be of value. I do plan to attend. It's our policy to request board approval for board members to attend, so that's why it's in front of you tonight. Director, as it states in the memo, Director Christensen, who is not in the country at the moment, did express an interest. She thought it would be worthy for her or another board member to also attend. I'll be glad to answer questions.
Okay. Any public comment on this item? All right, seeing none. Board?
Well, it's good that our general manager's going, but I don't see much need to go beyond that. I'm not sure. I know the last one was more water
Right.
centric, and this is housing. And
Yeah.
I mean, I think we definitely should talk to, you know, the county and the city of Santa Cruz, and as we do.
Mhm.
And that's the more direct communication. I mean, we don't need to negotiate with the Chamber of Commerce, and that's mainly this audience. So it seems like a excess money that we could use elsewhere to better benefit, to me.
Any other comments? No? I had a question on when it said the total cost was $849 to $949 per traveler. Did that include hotel
That
and?
includes everything. And the $849 is if you registered early, and I didn't want to take the prerogative to do that for a board member. So it would be $949, but that's all inclusive. Hotel, meals.
Okay.
You're running around like crazy. Yeah.
Okay. Any other? So we would need a motion to authorize board member attendance. Which I.
Well, if we have a board member who wants to attend, and there is going to be interaction with Ron and with community members, I'm supportive of that.
That's why
I agree with you in principle, Bruce, but it's just not a lot of money, and there could be some value to it.
Okay.
So I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Okay. Is moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
Okay, motion passes 3-1. Now is the time for oral communications for items not on tonight's agenda.
Thank you, Becky Steinbruner. I want to thank you for finally taking the country club well offline and removing the TCP contamination from your water system supply. Thank you. I also want to ask again that the Pure Water Soquel project be put to vote for everyone who gets water in the Prisma aquifer to be able to decide if it will occur or not. And I have been told anecdotally that your district may plan to do a vote, or at least a protest vote, for your users within your district. But I propose that all users of the Prisma aquifer need to be included in this, because you're putting it in the groundwater that people other than your district wells are in and rely upon for safe potable water. I also propose that because I know that the state is in the beginning phase of pushing for small water company consolidation. I'm going to Sacramento Thursday to learn more about that. And I know that when the state mandates something, as you well know, there's not much you can do about it. So as a small water company user, I may be receiving somewhere down the road water from the district or having to pay for this $60 to $70 million pure water Soquel project. I also propose that it be put out to vote for the entire Purisma Aquifer users, because as the Mid-County Groundwater Agency has been formed, it's still a question as to whether Soquel Creek Water District is going to ask the Mid-County Groundwater Joint Power Authority to help pay for it if it is incorporated into the Sustainable Groundwater Plan. So for those reasons, I really think you have to let people vote throughout the aquifer. I have a lot of questions. The expense is exorbitant. It relies on a very high level of technical expertise and everything working perfectly 100% of the time. It relies upon a lot of energy. It relies upon coming up with tests for things that we don't even know exist yet. And one in the literature, the nitrosamines are commonly found in treated recycled water, and haloacetonitriles are also found and are products of the disinfection. Both are toxic and carcinogenic, and I don't want them in my water. Thank you.
Anyone else on oral communications on items not on tonight's agenda? All right, thank you. Any board members?
Well, I need to respond to the last comment that Orange County has been running a system like this, which produces water that's even purer than our groundwater, and they've been doing it for 30 years. So it's not exactly, this unknown thing.
Good point. Any other board comments? Rochelle?
My understanding of where we would be recharging the water and my observation of a map shows that it would not be anywhere near the area where pure water, where the
Pure source.
source is located. So I don't see the nexus at all to be requesting this kind of vote.
Okay. Anyone else on anything? All right. Then we'll move on to special board assignments status report.
Yeah, I only have really one item, unless you have questions, and that is the item A under administration there. I just want to point out that the memorandum of agreement with the city of Santa Cruz that the board approved and the city approved at a recent meeting has been now officially signed and is complete.
Good news. Okay. Any members of the public? Of course.
Becky Steinbrenner, I'm a little confused here. Last board meeting, I guess I have a question about the public comment process on your reports. Last board meeting, you asked for public comment before the reports were given.
Right.
And
That was the idea.
so now you've begun the report and asked for public comment. So am I going to be allowed to comment on each report as it is given, or is it going to be as it has been?
That was a combined report. So, so as in tonight's agenda, there's an organization-wide abbreviated report. So that, once again, will be one comment period for that organization-wide abbreviated report. Okay?
Okay.
So this is, right now, we're talking about special board assignments.
Yeah, you're confusing the two. That comes up in 5.3.
I'm really confused.
So there's an opportunity to comment on each item, okay?
Okay, all right. So then,
5.1 is an item.
Item 5.1 is what we're currently on.
okay, all right. I just didn't want to make,
But
I wanted to
there's-
make sure I didn't cause a disruption like I seem to have
Understood.
caused at the last meeting.
But 5.3 has multiple phases to it.
Okay,
Right.
and
all right.
My
Thank you.
understanding is that the comments should be about the entire report, the
Right.
individual, any of those phases, not one phase given, one public comment, another phase given, another, like that.
Okay,
Right.
thank you.
And so there was a request that you and one other member of the public wanted to wait for the staff to give their report before you made your comments. So, as long as there's one option for people to comment, it doesn't matter to me, okay? I mean, there's still, I want people to understand, though, that really there's a ton in that report. So what they comment on may just be one little tiny part of it. So if you really want to be effectively commenting on other issues in that report that aren't brought up, then you would need to read the whole thing.
Thank you.
All right, so any comments from the board on that? Okay, so we'll move on to the calendar.
Yes, and nothing to report on that one unless you have
Okay.
questions.
Right? Any public comment on the calendar? Seeing none, we'll move on to the organization-wide abbreviated status report. Item 5.3.
For the conservation customer service field, I wanted to mention that we had a meeting today on stormwater recharge projects with the county and
Oh, good.
some other folks, and it was very productive. We've made a lot of progress on reviewing the sites that you gave us direction to look at a couple months ago, and we'll be coming back with an update and a request for more direction at the second meeting in September. We've
Great.
basically identified 4 sites that we're really focusing on. So
Great. That's excellent news. Thank you.
any questions on the items that were reported?
I think we're good.
And I'm going to cover operations and maintenance tonight.
Okay.
I didn't put down any items for engineering, but if there are any other questions or curiosities, let me know. On behalf of Christine, the 2 big items here are that the O'Neill well is back online. We've blocked off the 2 zones that we feel were contributing to the ammonia problem. We haven't received tests yet back on that. We need to let it stabilize, but we'll report back to you next meeting on that. Also, she lists here that the several schools that are in the Pajaro Valley Unified School District have requested the district test for lead as allowed for, and so that's the first request that we've received from any school, and so we'll be starting that up.
Great. Okay. Any other questions or comments from other portions of the report? There's a... Melanie,
Yeah, we're each going to give
You're
a
going to
quick-
highlight each component? Okay.
Just under
Finance?
special projects and community outreach, I just wanted to touch on 2 things. First is the educational trailer has been actively going out. Today we brought it down to the Santa Cruz Wastewater Treatment Facility, and Jessica York took a look at that as well as some testing that was done down there. We've also gotten some requests to have it at community events, both from existing communities within the Mid-County, so at a church as well as a chamber meeting, and then out and abroad. We just got a call today to have it be a part of the tour for the Water Reuse Conference that will be held in March in Monterey.
Great.
And this is just a couple pictures from the open house of the trailer. We've also gotten quite a few calls from water agencies who saw this in our e-blast wanting to know some information about the design and the cost and how much that will be. So we will be creating a handout on the generation of that we can provide people. Just also wanted to touch that last month we also did a couple tours down in Southern California. We went to 3 different sites to look at how purification is being done in other communities, both from the treatment technology as well as the recharge of the groundwater basin. So just wanted to point out that we did look at the Terminal Island Water Reclamation Facility. That water is purified and then goes out to recharge the groundwater basin to protect from seawater intrusion, and that's been in effect since 2002.
Yeah. Bruce?
You did a good job in the report talking about all the places you went and all the things you saw. I was just wondering, were there things that you learned that were new, and might that change what we do, can make a difference kind of a thing?
Yeah, we actually, as we go and tour some of these sites, as we get, we always ask for the lessons learned, especially how they can improve upon. For the West Basin facility, which you guys toured back last year, they're actually talking about the contracting in terms of services, how to potentially change the model. They did that kind of as a design build and then operate. They're looking at whether or not it's better for them to bring the operations back in-house or to continue to outsource. A lot of different changes were going on that site. They were doing some retrofitting and upgrading to the system, so that was very interesting. And then one of the sites that we actually saw that was new was Hyperion, the Hyperion Wastewater Treatment Facility, and that was an educational center. And again, I think they just emphasized that it's just really important to educate and outreach. And the learning center that we saw there was actually an $11 million learning center. So I think our $6,000 to $8,000 trailer that we did so far, and we have a very aggressive educational program that we're going to try to reach a lot of people to. I think we're going to get a lot of bang for the buck on them.
Okay. So now finance.
So I just wanted to report out real quickly on our Water Rates Advisory Committee meeting yesterday. I think we're making good progress, and we believe we're ready to bring a conceptual rate design to the board at our September 5th meeting. So I just want to let you know
Great.
that will be coming up.
Thank you and all the people who are serving on the committee.
Good evening. I wanted to remind the board and officially invite you to the employee recognition event that we're having on August 31st. We'll be having the ceremony in our yard at 11 a.m. and we'll have 9 employees that we'll be recognizing for their service to the district, as well as Dr. Jaffe. Hopefully you can make that as well for your service to the district.
I'll try to. It might
Okay.
be difficult.
Okay, great. And then I did report, as you read in the report on new hire, Gabriela Bracamonte started with the district as our new engineering technician yesterday, on Monday. We also had a new short-term summer intern who also started yesterday in our outreach program.
Unfortunately, that's the same day and time as the Aqua Groundwater Committee meeting, so I'm going to have to be absent for that.
We'll miss you.
You should be able to make it for
Congratulations.
the beginning. Yeah. Thank you for serving for 15 years.
Oh, thank you.
All right. General Manager?
Yes, so let me get to mine. So a couple items here I'd like to mention. The biennial groundwater report. This agency has kind of led the effort in the basin here toward groundwater monitoring and management, along with Central's help, and now it's more under the purview of the Mid-County Groundwater Agency. So the groundwater reports now go to that agency, where they used to come here, and that was pretty much it. So I just wanted to give you the highlights of the biennial groundwater report that was recently out, and also ask the board whether they'd like to have that come back as an informational item or that sort of thing. It's certainly available online through the Mid-County Groundwater Agency, and in the report is a brief summary, executive summary, if you will, of the results, which I can present if you like tonight, or just take questions.
I think it's worthwhile to bring it back as an item and maybe just have a, short 5 to 10 minute slide presentation.
Okay.
Because some of the visuals they created this time were pretty helpful, I
Okay.
thought.
Okay. Would you like to have hydrometrics come down and present that, or staff just?
I'm okay with staff.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. All right.
And Ron,
let's-
is this a good place, since you're talking,
We've got the
okay.
Mid-County Groundwater coming up in the
Okay.
couple items afterwards, 5.6,
Gotcha.
I think would be better. And then also I'll mention, there's an article that I have in there, direct potable purified recycled water regulations. So there is Assembly Bill 574. It was co-sponsored by California Coastkeeper Alliance, which is aimed to require the State Water Resources Control Board develop regulations in 4 years for potable reuse. And that's playing off the scientific report that came to the legislator and concluded that it was feasible to develop direct potable reuse, or they call it DPR for direct potable regulations that would protect public safety. So that's being looked at now in the Assembly.
Okay,
That's all I have.
other questions? Any? Okay, so I think that
I conclude.
concludes that report. Is there anyone in the public that has comments on that item?
Thank you, Becky Steinbruner. I have a number of questions. I wonder why in the district's community water plan, this is under the administrative report, there are dollar amounts for Pure Water Soquel, there are dollar amounts for the water transfers. There's no dollar amount given for recharge projects like stormwater capture, and I'm feeling like the district isn't very serious about that, and that bothers me. I just want to register that. In item B, under the administrative report, I'm happy to see there's some action being taken for low-income assistance. I hear that a lot from people when I'm at the farmer's market, that some people are now having trouble paying their water bills. And I know that the district is anticipating a 17% rate increase next year. And I was able to go to the finance the rate advisory group yesterday, and was pretty amazed to hear their opinion that it should just go up and up and up. And if one man actually said, if people don't like it, they can just move. That attitude bothers me a lot, because I'm out in the public and I hear a lot of people struggling to make ends meet. And you have to have water to live. So it bothers me, and you know, I still have your draft budget report here that shows that your rates are the second highest in the state for a district your size now. And you're looking at a $60 to $70 million Pure Water Soquel project that to me looks like it is pretty much a done deal. You're already bringing on an engineer that in your draft report you said the 2-year temporary assistant engineer was for Pure Water Soquel. It's noted here in your document. So you're already adding staff for Pure Water Soquel. And that bothers me, because I feel like you're telling people one thing, but you're moving ahead in another way. I also want a report from engineering about why all of the water pipes within Aptos Village were dug up, removed, and different pipes put in. I'd like to hear why that was done. And I also want to clarify in the general manager's report about direct potable reuse. In the advisory group's recommendations, they repeatedly brought up concerns about the unknown health risks of low dose chronic levels of contaminants. And I've talked with you about some, the trihaloacetonitrates, and
Thank you.
thank you.
Any other members of the public comment on this report? I would like to address a couple things, just because I keep hearing the same thing. So stormwater recharge is something we're all very committed to, and as you maybe heard in the report, that we're going to get an update on that in September. And so that's just wrong. As far as low income rates, want people to understand that, you know, under current law, we really can't legally offer lower rates for people without that coming from the other customers. So it's just not legal for us to do that, correct?
Correct. I've wanted to do that for years.
Right, we've been wanting to do that. So I'm glad the state is working towards some kind of solution there. This Pure Water Soquel not being a done deal, if you want to have any kind of water project even considered, you have to go a certain distance to investigate and move forward, or you'd never get anything built. And so nothing is going to happen until the environmental impact report is complete, no decisions are made. But you do have to commit staff and energy and money to get anything done, because the alternative is not is having our aquifer ruined by seawater intrusion. So that just would be irresponsible in my mind. So just wanted to address those.
Just to continue that notion, we are required to do any project, we have to do an EIR first. And that means you need to know enough about the project to be able to say whether it's got, noise problems or geology problems or et cetera, et cetera. And that means you need to study it, you need to have engineering, just like the city of Santa Cruz is doing right now in getting ready for their EIR on their project. They have engineers that they're hiring for their project, even though they may never do that project. And so that's again, state law requires you to do that. You need to, before you can approve anything, you need to do an EIR for it, which means you need to know an awful lot about the project to be able to answer all those questions.
So is there another comment from the public on this
Yeah,
organization?
Jeff Stallings.
On this particular report?
Well, yeah, because it's what you're talking about right now.
Okay.
About not moving forward on Pure Water Soquel, because I live right next door, you know that.
Yeah.
And you started, last Friday morning, we were surprised that there was a backhoe right at our back fence digging a hole. We weren't informed that there was going to be work, and you were digging out the current, it turns out, after doing some sleuthing, sewers, so you could demolish the 2 buildings on the property. So you are moving forward. If you're demolishing, you're moving forward on that project. I know you're going to shake your head.
No, I mean, that's not true.
And then I'm going to comment on my letter that's in this tonight, because I don't really feel like staying. I put too much time into this thing. I'm tired of it. We are concerned about noise. You guys have in your current operation these sets of plates that are right on the other side of our fence that could be anywhere on your current property. Forget the annex. When you guys pull your backhoe out and start slamming those things around, our whole house vibrates. Could you please try to find a different place to put those on your property? Your inaction on that does not give us any kind of assurance that you're going to not continue to do whatever you want to do that's going to disrupt our lives. Okay, I'm not going to stick around for you getting to my letter, but you're moving forward on the demolishing the buildings. That tells me you're moving forward on Pure Water Soquel. I don't want those buildings torn down, to be honest with you. I like that that building, but we're going to lose it. Anyway, please, if you're going to be doing work at 8:30 in the morning on that property, whatever you're going to do, someone let us know. I had to go out there. Actually, I have a GoPro. I'm going to be filming everything you do on that property. But notifying, we're right next to you. Let us know. Okay?
Thank you. Can I ask staff to address the demolition and the reason for that, please?
Okay, we can do that now, or there's an item later on in the agenda for that.
Just to answer, he's gone, but I still think for the public to know that is not the reason they're being demolished.
No, we had plans to do that even before we really wanted to consider that site for the recycled water facility, and really we did an environmental review for that area as an extension of our corporation yard, and that includes those houses being torn down.
I'll
and
just
they're not
add,
habitable.
for whatever, we don't know what's going to happen to that site or what it's going to be used for, but whatever does happen, those houses need to go either way. So that's the bottom line there.
I think we'd also considered maybe expanding our parking into that area too. So again, the buildings would have to get moved for that. So whatever we use it for, the buildings would
There's
be.
several options.
Okay, I just wanted to make that clear. All right, next, let's see. We have District Council.
Yes, 2 or 3 things. One, we've been tracking, with the help of Shelley, SB 229, which is the remedial legislation that's being passed on the ADU bill that was passed last year. And it appears from all the amendments that have happened that it will apply to the district if it's in fact enacted. And what it'll require is not a whole lot different than what we're doing now. I mean, you can't have new connections for ADUs that are within existing buildings, but otherwise you're entitled to, and the charges have to be based on the cost of service. So I think we're going to be all right. The Goleta case, which is a case that deals with both tiered rates and whether you have to notify property owners in all cases, which this district does anyway, is now at the appellate level and being briefed and should be decided probably sometime in the next 4 months. And the two cases at the Supreme Court, United versus City of Buenaventura and the Great Oaks case, are now set for oral argument on September 5th. And since they stream that, I'll probably listen to it, at least part of it, see if you get any indication of where the Supreme Court's going by the questions the justices asked. That's always a little bit of a crapshoot.
What was that case having to do with?
They have to do with tiered rates, different
tiered
rates
rates
for
as well.
agriculture and irrigation in Ventura, and Great Oaks was different rates for residential
Okay.
and ag in Santa Clara County Water District.
Okay.
So that completes my report.
Any questions? Comments on that? Okay.
Thanks for keeping up on those.
Next is the Finance Committee meeting summary.
I don't have anything to add to the summary, but I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them.
All right. Anyone? Any public questions or comment on the Finance Committee report?
Thank you, Becky Steinbruner. I'm curious, yesterday was the first time I could attend, and I was pretty amazed to hear what I heard. I wonder how this committee was selected, and also I just want to point out that some information that was given to them was difficult to understand. It
That
was
was, excuse me, that's not the Finance Committee. That was the rate,
the rate base.
committee.
All right, I'm sorry. My
Okay.
mistake. I was confused. I'm sorry.
Okay. Next item is the Santa Cruz Mid-County Groundwater Agency.
Yes, I'll lead into that, and then I know Dr. Jaffe, who chairs that committee, or recently just chaired it, would like to comment also. But there's lots going on with the MGA. There were a couple of things we're looking to take back to the board, the hiring of facilitator and hydrologist to work with the Public Advisory Committee. And that's kind of the big news is the Public Advisory Committee. There's been selection of that, and Dr. Jaffe can talk to that in a second. And then moving forward to use that Public Advisory Committee to help inform the development of the groundwater sustainability plan, which needs to be done in 2 years. I'll just put a plug in. The next Mid-County Groundwater Agency drop-in hours will be held on Thursday, August 17th from 10 to noon at the Community Foundation. And
just an important update on the selection of the advisory committee for the groundwater plan. There were 30 applicants for 8 positions.
Good.
And very well qualified, connected people who applied, and but there were not as many applicants as we had hoped for in the business, representing business interests and representing institutional interests. And so the application process has been reopened for those 2 subcategories until next Tuesday, the 22nd. So apply if you're interested. It's an important part for our future of groundwater in this area.
And I'll just add that Rob Morani from Central Water District is now the chair, and I'm the vice chair.
yeah, of the Mid-County Groundwater Association, our agency.
All right. So looks like it's now time to move to the 6.1, which are the will serve letters.
A little different group of will serves for you to look at tonight, and I'll take a little moment to explain the difference here. We have a mix of well, 2 of these we talked about a little earlier. They're part of the Potbelly Beach area, item 6.1.1 and 6.1.3. Again, though, even those two are a little different. 6.1.3 is a home that is on the well currently, and as we talked about that, there is no water demand offset for that type of project. The other unique situation here is item 6.1.4 is a situation where a couple years ago, I'm sorry, let me see, it'll be January 5th, 2016, so a year ago, the board decided to grant a sunset for some parcels that are existing parcels in subdivisions. This is one of them that you looked at. Most of the situation was taken care of at the time they built the subdivision. The meter boxes are in the sidewalk. So that's that situation. Again, the board decided that water demand offsets would not apply for 3 years. Gave them 3 years to hook up. If there's any other questions, I'd be happy to address them.
Question?
On page 79, there's a checklist that I don't think I've seen in these reports before. But the big question is, on the right-hand column, it says project meets requirements, and there's a yes box and a no box, and neither of them are checked for any of those. So I'm wondering if this one actually did go through and had all those things verified.
Are you on, you said 71?
79.
79.
79.
It's a water efficiency.
It's up on the screen.
Underwater
Those,
efficiency checklist.
It's up on the
yeah,
screen.
those will be verified. This is an application to reduce the water demand offset, and they pledge to do those. If they don't do those, we have to go in and verify them.
Okay.
If they're not, then they have to pay
Okay, so it will be
more.
done at some point.
However, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions from the board? Any public comment on this item? Let's see.
Tom Stumbaugh, Aptos. This is item 6.1.1,
It's all of 6.1. There are,
all of 6.1.
correct. There are 4 separate sub-items.
Okay, he just said something about if the people have not met their water demand offset
No,
situation, they have to pay something?
No, this is the water efficiency, water use efficiency requirements checklist.
So there's a water demand offset for regular fixtures, and then if people put in particularly water-saving fixtures, then their water demand offset is not as high because they're not going to use as much water. So that
But
has
they
to,
have to satisfy the water demand offset
Correct.
absolutely.
before they will get any service,
Correct.
correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. That was confusing to me.
Sorry.
Yeah, all of these 4 will serve letters have already satisfied water demand offsets if they apply.
Right.
Which is just 2 of them.
Well, you know what bothers me about this is that been in a critical overdraft ever since. But you keep issuing new service time and time and time again. I just don't understand that. Water is critical for everybody's needs, and water is a way you can control growth. But we just let growth go and give them the water.
It sounds like maybe you and I should have an offline conversation about the water demand offset program.
Oh, no, I don't think I need to be educated on that.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
I would like to know what Barry Swenson Builder did for all the water demand offset he got. I would like to know that, because there's not much evidence of it.
We have records of all of that. All right. Any other board comments or motions?
Well, I'll make the motions to approve all 4.
Okay.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
All right, the motion carries 3-1. I have a question. You're opposing even unconditionals that we agreed on the
Well,
policy?
there was one vote, so.
Okay, all right, I just
If you wanted to
wondered.
break it up, I'll.
Okay, just asking.
It was a protest vote, I think,
Okay,
of some sort.
yes. All right, so next item would be item 6.2, the pipe loop study.
Yeah, you haven't seen any formal items on this. We've been giving reports over the last several months, but tonight we have two representatives from Black & Veatch here. If there are any detailed questions about the proposal, the City of Santa Cruz Water Department, and as well as the district, and even including Scotts Valley Water District and San Lorenzo Valley Water District, came together. The selection of consultants was conducted by Santa Cruz and staff at Soquel Creek Water District. We looked at 4 proposals from Black & Veatch, Corona Environmental Consulting, Trussell Technologies, as well as some other partners, and then Water Quality and Treatment Solutions Incorporated. Those 4 consultants submitted proposals to assist both the city and the district in conducting further evaluations to accept city's winter water. And the big share of this effort is to conduct benchtop testing, which is several jars with coupons and looking to see how the water is aggressive and not aggressive. And then based on that, moving forward with a full-scale pilot pipe loop study. This effort is going to extend well beyond a year. So it's a large effort. Black & Veatch was selected. They have done several pipe loop tests in the past, and they're currently conducting pipe loop tests. And they have also on their team Dr. Mark Edwards from Virginia Tech University, and he's the one leading up the charge down in Fresno. And so we feel that they have a very good, strong expertise in this situation. The city and the district have agreed to share the costs in this, and the effort here is proposed at over $600,000. To be exact, it's $668,626. There are different tasks, and we will obviously go forward in phases and share the costs. There are some optional tasks that the city would be responsible for, the city or Scotts Valley and San Lorenzo Valley, if they want to incorporate those additional tasks, they would be taking care of those. So tonight we're asking the board to authorize the general manager to issue it's essentially a purchase order to commit to half of that work.
Okay.
And of course, our goal is to try to take water from the city next winter, next November.
Right.
They're willingly giving us the water.
It's a
Might
purchase.
sell us the water.
Sell us
It's a
the water.
purchase. I didn't mean to.
Purchase. You said to take water from.
Okay, purchase.
Purchase, yeah.
Okay, any public comment on this item?
I do, thank you, Becky Steinbrenner. That was my question. If the goal is to begin purchasing water next November, this study, it says will take 14 months. So how is that going to work? It sounds like you would just be getting the results of the study by November, and is all the infrastructure in place, and is the study, I had understood that you had some pipe somewhere in the system that you were able to close off, so it's not going to be a new system that would be tested, that it was being established pipes with already some scaling involved. And so I just want to know how that's going to work with a study coming up to completion right at the time when you're hoping to begin the water transfers. Thank you.
It is a tight schedule, and if the 14 months would take us to October, and we'd have a chance to know before the winter season.
Right. We will plan to potentially establish some of the initial infrastructure improvements maybe next May, conditioning of the pipes if necessary with a corrosion inhibitor such as orthophosphate would likely need to be done 6 months before we accept the water. So if we can't meet the deadline, I mean, maybe we end up pushing the purchase of the water into early 2019. We'll see. We have to just take it, month by month, and it's certainly something that we take very seriously. We don't want to rush into something, but our goal is to try to get at least some information. Maybe it's preliminary, but the jar testing should give us a good feel for how aggressive the water is and whether it should be adjusted or not.
Right. Okay. Any board comment or motions? Yes, sir.
I was surprised by the scope and cost of this study. I don't know if anyone else was.
Absolutely.
So could you help me get over sticker shock here and explain why such a large scope is necessary?
I can try, although we do have representatives in the audience that might do a better job at it. One thing that I didn't realize
Want
is
them
that...
to talk, that's fine.
Okay, I'll set the stage for them, but one thing that maybe wasn't clear in the proposal or their scope of work is that the pipe loop study, a lot of the costs involve lab fees, lab water quality tests.
110,000.
Yeah, so that's a big chunk of it, and we knew that was going to be a substantial amount. But also, each pipe loop will be harvesting pipes from the distribution system, from potentially some customer service lines, galvanized service lines, and they each have their own loop and infrastructure tank and pump, and it's going to be a very challenging effort, and it's many months, so time is money. I will let Dave and Ashu try to further explain that to you. It is a big effort.
Okay.
Go ahead, Shu.
Yeah, I think the biggest component of the scope of work is the pipe loop test, which is about $400,000. It goes on for about 9-10 months. There is a routine sampling effort that we're hiring a local sampling technician to do, which runs about close to $75,000 to $100,000 over a period of 10 months. There is a lab which will do the sampling, which is one of the recommended labs from the district and the city, which will be another $100,000. So that's how it is. And then there is a cost to construct the pipe loop, which, we're getting quotes from the local contractors. We put a placeholder based on the quotes that we received. It's high at $50,000, but, we think we can get it down lower when we do the pipe loop design. And then we put about $40,000 in costs for the procurement of all the tanks and the pumps. And so the setup itself, the sampling, testing, twice a week of sampling and then testing itself constitutes a lot of the cost on that task. The next cost item is the bench scale testing, which is the task 2. And most of that work is done in a lab at Virginia Tech, and these guys are the leaders in developing the protocol and doing the testing for corrosion. And the cost that you see is for them there is an AC pipe involved, which is, you have to be careful with creating coupons and doing testing for that also, and these guys are going to do all of that and reporting, testing in their own lab and reporting back to us. So there's about $125,000 for them to do that work. So that goes on for about 3 months, 4 months of bench scale testing.
So is this, I have no experience whatsoever with this type of study. Is this typical
Yeah, I mean, it basically, we're doing a couple of pipe loop studies right now, one for San Antonio and one for Portland Water Bureau. And they're slightly larger system, they're a larger system than yours, but, you know, their fee is running about $800,000 to $900,000, similar time frame. Now, there is a possibility that, you know, we also looked at the, you know, whether we can look at the bench scale testing, get the results, and then make an educated decision on whether we really need to do pipe loop testing or not. And that's something that the city and the district have posed us the question that we're going to look at closely to see if we can not spend that $400,000 and maybe even use that to make the improvements to your system. So that's.
So we'll get an update on the bench scale work first.
Yes, yeah, and we'll be presenting the results to the board on that.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I'm curious, the pipe loop construction, are you taking a portion of our pipe in the system and then constructing?
Yeah, the way it is going to be set up is that we will take about 3 or 5 feet of galvanized pipe from your service connections, and we'll basically stick that into the pipe loops. And it's basically, we have 3 racks for 3 different water quality conditions. You know, you will have a combination of city and district water, you will have district water, you will have city-only water in different blends. And then we like to get results in triplicate so that we get accuracy on the results. So we take like a foot section of your 5-foot pipe, galvanized pipe, we'll stick that in there. We'll take AC pipe, same length, and then we'll cut that and put that in the pipe loop test as well. And then we also want to do lead and copper pipe. That's the setup. Does that answer your question?
So it's not in situ, but you're taking it out of?
Right.
Yes, yes.
And cutting a piece out and using that?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And then do you have like a test situation that you've already set up and you just stick this in it, or?
Yeah, so basically it will have
constructing.
tanks, you know, with water from the city, water from the district, and then we'll be basically pumping it through the pipe and then taking samples, and then on the other side it goes to drain. It's not a whole lot of water, that's why we like to stick with like small pipes, like really, you know, 3/4 inch or 1 inch pipe, and it's at a small rate that we run it through, but to simulate the real time, you know, situation, like when you have water flow, then you have stagnant flow. That's the way it is set up.
All right, thank you. Oh, you got another question?
Well, I've got lots of questions. I'm going to go back to the very beginning, and, you know, we did a study about a year and a half ago. In fact, Black and Veatch did this study, and I think that study was mandated by the Drinking Water Division, right? Now, what do they say about this pipe loop stuff and bench stuff, and are we doing that because they require that or not?
Well, when we checked with them for the previous study, that all preceded Flint, it preceded
Right.
Fresno,
Yep.
and so it is something that I have not, that they may not have required this next step. However, it is, I think as part of the lead and copper rule, it is required.
Right.
And so, and not to mention the district's infrastructure is largely asbestos cement pipe and a lot of galvanized service lines on the customer side. So we need to definitely confirm that that's not going to be a problem taking the city's aggressive surface water. So I know that the state would certainly welcome a study like this.
But they did not mandate it.
I can't confirm, at this stage, I haven't asked them directly since all the new changes that have come about.
They haven't come to us and said, do this in order to get your approval.
No, they have not.
Okay, so something we're doing on our own as of now.
As of now,
Right, okay.
correct.
Good. Now, that previous study, I went back today and read it again. It's got lots of monitoring things that we need to do. And if various things happen, various actions we need to take if we find this is starting to happen or that is starting to happen. So the first question is, why couldn't we just go ahead with that? I mean, it's not like we turn the water on and suddenly poison water comes out all over the place. I mean, the whole monitoring thing was slowly over time, we would do these things and observe things, and if things started to happen, we would take action. In fact, the most drastic action would be to turn the valve off and just stop the experiment. So why do we need to do all of this stuff when it sounds like we already had a protocol to just turn it on and go ahead and see what happens and start monitoring it and observe the conditions and adjust to them or even terminate it? So why are we spending over $700,000 for this study when we could make the study be, running it in our own system? Even, it could be, well, as we've talked about, a subset of our system. We could take, everything west of the creek and have that be our little laboratory.
That's a good question. I know that the consequences of introducing surface water and then just turning off if you do find there's leaching or aggression going on can last for, I think Davis and Woodland had that carry on for years, or at least 6-8 months of discolored water causing trouble in their system. But maybe Dave and Ashu can better answer what could happen and why we don't want to go down that road per se.
The problem we're going to have is that you already have scale developed in your system.
Yeah.
When you introduce new water, if you disrupt that scale, to reestablish it, to stabilize it can take a long time. So for instance, in Flint, when they had their problem, they switched back to the original source, and it took them, months to get back to a stable situation.
But they didn't even see the problem for over a year.
That's right.
They weren't monitoring it.
That's right.
We would be monitoring it.
Yeah,
so we would see problems
once you destabilize that scale, to reestablish it is going to take months. So yes, you're going to start seeing that, and then that problem will carry out for several months before you get back to where you were. And so you do it on a pilot scale, you avoid that whole upset of the distribution system. That's what we're trying to avoid.
Okay. Okay, I've got some more questions. Now, it talks in here about city requirements such as pipe harvesting and water requirements, and I don't know what either of those are. I'd like to know what it is, and are we paying for the city's special requirements here?
No, I think the city, well, the harvesting of pipe is going to be mainly for the district system. I think that's what we're testing, and what we're testing is, against using different blends of city water and district water.
Yeah, I got that.
This scope does not include the actual extraction of the pipe.
No, it
that
doesn't.
would be on each agency.
Right.
So we would have to either have our crew pull out, I think it's essentially 50 feet is what I heard.
It's
or
not
maybe
even.
less.
It's not even
maybe
that.
20
Here's
feet.
why your report says city requirements such as pipe harvesting.
Just to identify which pipes, I think, is this task right here, identify.
I had the same question.
It's not
but- Yeah.
clearly, I understand the district needs to go out and harvest some pipes to be able to do
And the
testing.
city,
And why do we call it the city requirements to do these? And
Oh, the
But something
reason it
different,
is written, the reason it is written as city is because the contract is going to be with the city. That's why.
Yeah, it's clarified later.
Okay.
I had the same question, and then I
Okay.
didn't know what pipe harvesting was.
All right.
It's taking pipe out.
It's just taking pipe out of the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I take it that we're not doing,
Testing.
because Scotts Valley and San Lorenzo have dropped out of this, so we're not doing any of the things that their special tasks.
well, even if they chose to, we wouldn't be contributing to that.
Okay.
Okay. There's a chance that the city might move forward with some of the bench scale testing identified in the. Well, it's not even included. That was taken out.
Nothing is included.
That
It's
was
all
removed.
optional.
They came to the table. We discussed this proposal with them. They just don't have the financial means to contribute at this stage. It really is independent of the district and the city at this stage. So even if they were going to deal with anything, that's independent.
On the bottom of page 94, it talks about the finished water from the Grand Hill and various other places. I was wondering, which season are you going to harvest that water under? Is it, because the water quality changes from season to season. For example, in the winter, you're mainly getting storm runoff, so it's pure precipitation. In the spring, it's going to be base flow, so it's going to have a lot of,
Right.
things in it. And in the summer, you're probably getting pure reservoir water.
Right.
So which one are you going to use for your bench scale testing?
The bench scale testing is going to be, it's going to start from October, it's going to run through December. So whatever water is available at the time from the city is what we're going to have to test with.
The fall water then?
Right.
Okay.
But the pipe loop test is going to start from January. It will go through September, October, so you'll get the remainder of the seasons there tested.
Well, first of all, I might ask, why bother even doing the others? We're only going to get any precipitation from them in the, I think it's end of November through March. So why even test summer water? Because we'll never get summer water. That could save us, one quarter right, or 1/3 right there. Just don't test that water.
Yeah, the thought there was that if you have an aggressive summer water quality, and if this was to be carried on where you have, the city has more water to sell through the summer, then you have that option available.
Well, I, for one, would like to take that off. If we're not, that'll save us a chunk of money. And so my own.
What's the agreement, Reed, with the city? We can only get
The
it?
agreement is November through May, I believe.
The current agreement, the 5-year.
But I know that the previous study that you brought up, Director Daniels, was also included some post-transfer monitoring. And I maybe, whether that's included in the latter months, I don't know. But it doesn't just end in May. There has to be some subsequent monitoring to see how the system reacts to when you go back to the districts. This is the unique nature of our situation is we're going to be flip-flopping between winter transfer and then going back to groundwater and then going back to winter transfer. And so I think part of the monitoring, and correct me if I'm wrong, might include how it behaves when you go back to groundwater.
So, let me follow up on his question then. So say we never are going to get June water, and in June, would we be testing the pipes that had been carrying city water with now district water?
That would be representative.
That'd be represent the
Yes.
the real situation.
Yeah, that's the intent, yes.
But you're going to do your entire suite. The plan was to do the entire suite, all 5 different water sources for, 4 seasons, I guess. January through, 3 seasons. Anyway,
Not,
you would do summer testing with the city's water.
that's the current scope of work has, as one of the water quality conditions, yes.
So I, for one, would propose getting rid of that chunk of it.
Okay.
This is the agreement. Did you have more questions?
Nope, I'm done.
Dr. Jaffe had some.
Very, very basic question. So, pipe loop testing versus benchmark testing. Is there any, I think you mentioned that there was a consideration of doing the benchmark testing to inform what pipe loop testing is
Right.
necessary? Is there a reason why to do that or why not to do that? Can you talk about that?
Right, so bench scale testing is basically, we'll have a more number of water quality conditions that we would test for, because it's cheaper to test for those conditions on a desktop with a bunch of beakers with different water quality blends, and you put those coupons and test for those. It's a cheaper way to figure out which of those conditions need to be carried forward into the pipe loop testing. So we would shortlist from a set of 6 conditions we have identified for bench scale testing. We would shortlist down to 3, and then we would carry forward those into pipe loop testing. And the reason you want to do pipe loop testing is it gives you the real-time information on how the water quality is going to change, or how the 2 waters react with the pipe inside the scale inside the pipe and the water quality chemistry. And is when you start and stop, that's the information that you get from pipe loop testing. So you would want to do that And I think more and more, I'm not a regulation expert, our guy is not here today, but more and more I get, he's saying that more utilities are wanting to do the pipe loop testing to see the real-time effect rather than just relying on desktop study.
The jar testing is stagnant.
Right, so there's not the flow component.
Right.
I had a kind of a question, kind of wondering, is there a possibility of reconfiguring a scope of work to have the bench scale testing as part 1 or part A, and then come back to us with the results of that to make a decision on the pipe loop testing, with possibly considering the real situation that we'll be in, the likelihood of not having summer water from the city ever? In that latter proposal?
We could. I think it would definitely delay the potential of accepting water by next November, because I think what's proposed is somewhat a little parallel tracks, I think, if I'm correct.
Right.
But if you want to wait until after the benchtop testing is done, that's a couple months, I believe, 2 or 3 months.
What we're going to be doing is, when we're doing the bench scale testing, we're going to be designing the pipe loop and constructing it. So have it ready to go at the end of bench scale testing period.
Okay. I just thought I'd bring that up.
Can I
as an
also
idea.
ask a question related to the city and the district's partnership on this? Is really, just if you guys can answer, is this for their long-term water supply advisory committee alternatives? Because I think, what we're doing with the city is, two-part. One is the short-term pilot project, 5 years, and the second is whether or not they're element 1 to do their full aquifer storage and recovery. If they can do that, they may have more water to sell us all year round. So I think that's why they're looking at participating and sharing the cost with us 50-50 to fully inform that alternative.
That's true.
Right.
They are paying half.
The way we envision this, and we've had a lot of talk because of the price, was that if we could do the, first of all, water quality is paramount. We know that for our customers, and we don't want to shortchange that. And then next on the list is groundwater management and stopping seawater, and then cost is third. So in looking at it through those 3 lenses, the way Taj and I had been talking about and others, is that if we could get through the JAR study, and that said, you're good to go, then, or no, if it said you're good to go, you still wouldn't know. You have to go to the pipe loop study. If it says doesn't look so hot, you want to continue on, then you got to continue on. So that's what we're looking at. And if you go to the full pipe loop study, and if it did say you didn't have to do anything, then that cost saves a lot more than having to go orthophosphate or condition each well. So it's an investment. The other bookend was just go ahead and do it. Let's just orthophosphate every well. We looked at that scenario, and the cost over long term plus putting that in didn't make sense versus trying to test to see whether we actually needed to do it.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, so is it an all or none then proposal right now? I guess. Is that what it is? We're pretty much...
I think the question, I'm going to help facilitate this. I think the question, what I hear being asked is, could we do the JAR study and get the result, and then get the results back? And I think the decision is, yes, absolutely, we could do that. What we would be potentially saving if the JAR study said you didn't have to go any further would be $400,000 in the study itself, maybe a little less assurance. It would probably also sacrifice doing a water exchange in this coming year. Is that correct?
Because it would delay if you were to do the pipe loop testing after that, then it would delay the transfer, yeah. So if you didn't have to do it, then you will have a little less assurance, obviously, like you said, but then you could move forward with the transfer with the appropriate monitoring next year.
But the likelihood of getting water in November, December is quite low. So you'd miss getting water November 1st.
Yeah. So it could be a quantity of water, not water or no water.
Exactly. So you could get January and February, because that would be 2 months of delay.
Yeah. There's also the chance there may not be, might be
Any
no
water at all, yes.
Well, I guess, is there a situation where you would have enough confidence with the bench studies?
That's a possibility. So what you're talking about here is, do you stretch out the schedule, do you do the bench scale, and then start the pilot scale? And we have an overlap right now in order to meet the schedule. That overlap is a $50,000 to $100,000 cost. So for you guys, half of that, basically. So that's the dollar amount that we're talking about here.
So you're saying you could continue, still keep on the same schedule, but still have a potential stop point, and what you will have lost is investing in the design and
construction.
In construction. So yeah, if you delay it, or else you
Yeah.
potentially have spent some money that you wouldn't need if that's what it actually showed.
And what kind of delay would that be?
The
It
delay?
sounds like 2 months.
2 to 3 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what's the city's take on this? Where are they with this?
I think
they already approved this?
No, they have not.
Okay.
No, that's not scheduled. We're before them, but it is being taken to the council in a couple weeks. I think they had a similar concern or approach of trying to do it stepwise.
It seems to me like that's the prudent thing to do, is do it stepwise. And we do lose 2 to 3 months, but as Director Daniels pointed out, that doesn't preclude us from getting any water during the winter, just the initial water. And we don't know for sure whether that's even going to be a condition, so.
Right.
I think proceed more slowly and less expensively.
Yeah. I want to address one of the other questions.
For less cost.
Director Daniels brought up is, what is the water quality like? What is the water quality that we'll be taking? Is it summer? Is it fall? Is it winter? And hopefully we can, if we can confirm that fall or winter or summer water is more aggressive than winter water, then taking that water would be definitely conservative. And tell us that that's the worst case scenario. I can't answer that question right now of whether their summer water is more aggressive or not. I don't know if we've really, because it wasn't available. But if it is available, then we could get started sooner if it's more aggressive, and it would be a conservative approach. But we could get started sooner than waiting for that winter water in November and to come.
Good point.
So we could start the bench scale testing sooner, possibly.
Well, yes, if we can look at their water quality and determine whether it would provide us a more conservative result.
It means your jar studies could be the most
Could
aggressive
begin,
ones.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Worst case scenario. Yeah. Sounds like there's consensus, but we need to make a motion of some kind. So this scope of work includes doing everything at once. So I don't know how to.
Well, you could approve tasks 1 and 2 right now, and then we could revisit task 3 after those results come in, or half of those 2 tasks.
Right.
It sounds reasonable to me.
Is there anything that doesn't make sense to both of you about that approach?
No, I mean, I think
either
it makes sense. Move forward, move slowly, and, there is a possibility that you may not have to go to pipe loop testing, so.
Right. It's just it's a big sum of money to ask our customers to foot if we don't need to.
Yeah, so I'll make the motion that we move slowly and approve the benchmark testing and the other things that are necessary to go along with that, and then make a decision. Yeah.
Would you maybe tasks 1 and 2, the desktop
Task 1 and
evaluation
2.
and bench scale corrosion testing?
Yeah.
Well, actually, task 1, project management, is for both 2 and 3, so it's only
So the
part of
portion-
task,
portion-
part of
yeah,
task 1 and task 2.
Right.
Yeah. And
Okay.
so,
I'll second that.
yeah, I don't know, I guess there's not a dollar amount on that we can get right at this point, but maybe it can be brought back to us with what.
Task 2 is 134, $350 or something like that?
Okay, so
Right.
Task 100 is still paid as time and material, so if time is not spent, it wouldn't be billed.
Right, yeah, and that's the thing, you're gonna be informed of the results as we go along.
Okay.
And you can terminate or continue at any point in time.
Okay.
Yeah, to give us flexibility, if you could approve, authorize Ron to issue a purchase order to the city for tasks 1 and 2, we can work together maybe with Black and Veatch to minimize task 1 a little bit, to only reflect the management associated with task 2. But it would be nice if we could get started on the jar testing.
Yes.
Well, especially to not delay the city's approval. We'll share your decision with them and see if they want to do a similar approach.
Okay.
That would be helpful to keep things rolling.
All right,
So-
is my motion sufficient?
Does it need to be reworded in some way to give the general manager the authority to do a
Up
purchase
to-
order for tasks 1 and 2?
Right, not to exceed the amounts listed in the table, but potentially a little reduced for task 1.
Yeah.
And then we
believe
could
it
add
was
to the motion that
Clear. Karen?
results will be brought back to us to decide whether to do task 3 or not.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll add that.
Yeah.
Yeah, which would, I think was
Actually, there is a
the
board
intention anyway.
presentation
Yeah.
already in the scope where
Yeah.
we would present the results and the recommended approach moving forward.
Okay.
So do we need for clarity for Karen to read those back? Is there any, are you good? Oh, thank you.
She's
He's
got it.
fast.
Yeah, she's on it.
Wanna
She
make
knows
sure
where we're going.
Made it better.
All right, so
You second?
I seconded.
Okay,
Okay,
we're all fighting over it.
all right, so all in favor?
We've already had public comment on this.
No?
No.
Have we? Yes, we
Yeah.
did. All right. Yes, yes.
Early on.
I don't think you did.
Did we not?
We should.
No.
All right, well, before we vote, for sure. It's been a while, I forgot whether we did or not.
Excuse me, you did actually.
I did speak.
Commented
Yeah.
after Taj's
Right.
presentation.
Okay, good.
My bad.
Okay.
We're good then.
I just want to make sure that the lock water is included in the study, so that if there were
Well,
excess water in the
public
lock.
comment, you got your chance. Okay, thank
All
you.
right, you asked.
All right,
All right.
okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, sorry.
Opposed?
And it will include lock water because that's what goes through the Graham Hill treatment plant along
That's
with all
right.
the other waters. All the other waters go through.
It's all their combined water.
At various times of the year, this and that and the other thing. Okay?
All right?
All right.
All- Okay, we're good. We
Got
can
through
move on. So next item is the Estates Water Treatment Plant media replacement.
Yeah, Estates well is one of our wells that has to treat for, it has iron and manganese removal vessels there. And as Christine stated in her memo, that facility has not been retrofitted or maintained. The interior of the vessel, the media, the sand, the anthracite, the gravel, as well as the coating on the inside of those pressure vessels hasn't been touched since they was installed in 1986. We did do a project in 2009 where we recoated the outside of those vessels, but this is part of our, routine maintenance, and it's been a long time. And so she's proposing that go out to bid, and we'll bring back the results of that to you when we receive them.
I'm assuming the first paragraph of the memo that included estates and the ones that were replaced was incorrect.
Yeah, we didn't.
Okay. All right. Bruce.
A question. I imagine I just recognized it for the first time, but on page 108, it says the successful bidder will have 60 calendar days to, quote, substantially complete the project.
Right.
Is that a standard term? 'Cause-
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All
It
right.
means that we can put the facility in operation.
Okay.
It's a critical
I was
point
wondering
of.
about that.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Final completion allows them to finish non-essential stuff, punch lists and things like that.
Good. I learned something new.
Are
Thank
you
you.
going to make the motions then?
Yeah, make the motion.
I'll
Two?
second.
Two of them?
Oh, both of them, all 6 of them.
And we need roll call on the
Yep.
second one.
Roll call, it says on both.
On both.
Public comment.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so,
We need public.
sorry, you're right, I didn't think there would be any. So, yes, anybody have comment on the recoding? Okay. So,
Made the motion.
I did.
moved, seconded,
It was forced down my.
roll call vote.
Director Lather,
Yes.
Director Daniels?
Yes.
Director Jaffe?
Yes.
President Hugh?
Yes.
Is that for both motions?
That was for both
Both
motions.
Okay.
Okay, and so we move to item 6.5 to add signatories to the Santa Cruz County Bank and Wells Fargo Bank accounts.
So we are seeking approval through resolution to add the supervising accountant, which is a position currently held by Ryan Kinney, as an authorized signer on our Santa Cruz County Bank and Wells Fargo Bank accounts. During the summer months especially, but with staff increasingly off-site at meetings and on vacation and illnesses and whatnot, we're finding it increasingly difficult to get the two signers for our payroll and accounts payable processes. So this would simply ease that process and ensure that we almost always have a finance representative signing off on those transactions.
Okay?
Makes sense to me. I'll make the motion.
Any,
Any public comment?
yeah,
public
any
comment.
public comment on this item? Okay, seeing none.
Okay. So I'll make the motion now.
I'll second your motion.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Roll call.
Oh, roll call, you're right.
Director Lather?
Yes.
Director
Could I
Daniels?
forget?
Yes.
Director Jaffe?
Yes.
President Hugh?
Yes, ma'am. Next is the hydrometrics extension in 6 months.
Yeah, the purpose of this memo is to ask the board to approve a 6-month extension to the current consultant agreement with Hydrometrics for general hydrologic services. So it doesn't include all our services, more along the lines of helping Taj and Christine with smaller items, wells, monitoring, and that sort of thing. But their contract ends in December, and we would, I'm requesting that you allow that to extend until the end of June to align with fiscal year. And then we would, during that time, go out with an RFQ for hydrologic consulting services, put it out on the street for, opportunity to apply for.
Sounds like a good plan to me. I'll make the motion. Motions.
Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll second.
Okay, sorry.
I'm kind of confused with this, because the second motion
Discussion.
is conducting a competitive selection process for the hydraulic conservatory for a 3-year contract starting January 1st.
Oh,
And
That should
seems
be
wrong.
July.
Oh, that should be July. That's my
That's
error.
July 1st.
You're right.
So we need to change that.
Okay.
Yeah.
With
Good
that
pickup.
correction, thank you.
Okay, so the motion and the second will
In
have
fact,
that correction.
doesn't the first one already have conduct a competitive selection process? I think we only need to do the first motion.
Oh, it's or.
It was an or.
Or, it's an or, there we go.
Okay, right. So it'll be just motion
first
number
motion.
one?
Yeah,
Just the
sorry.
first motion,
Forgot.
yeah.
Got it.
If you
That's-
didn't agree, you could
You
go to
could
two.
do the second one.
Yeah, first motion.
That's right.
Okay.
My mistake.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Right. That's
Motion carries. Thank you. West Annex demolition project.
We're moving on to 6.7?
Yep.
Okay. We solicited bids, and we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 competitive bids for the demolition of the 2 structures located adjacent to the district's headquarters. The County of Santa Cruz Planning Department has issued a demolition permit, and so we'll work, assuming the board approves this contract for $53,300 to Coastwide Environmental Technologies. We'll initiate that contract and move forward with removing those structures.
Okay. Any public comment on this item?
Thank you, Becky Steinbruner. I have filed letters of protest on this, and I discussed this with your board at your last meeting. This, one of the houses anyway, I could only find information about one, it was built in 1890. And you've got to know that there's some incredibly significant building material in that house. Now, I know there is asbestos, but from reading your report, it seemed like it's rather confined to an area of the kitchen counter. So I want to make a plea with you. I've seen what happens when houses like this are just splintered. there are people in the community that will come for free and salvage this wood. It's a lot of it probably virgin redwood taken from the canyons nearby. Why would you not want to offer that to people who will do something with it instead of just smashing it and sending it to the landfill? It makes the process a little more cumbersome maybe, but in the long run, what are you accomplishing here if you just splinter it and send it to the landfill when it could actually be put to good use, either for other structures or maybe even moved? There are people who would maybe do that for you. So I don't understand why you are so quick to want to spend $53,000 to have it splintered and sent to the landfill, when if you just slow down, and I don't know what the rush is. If you just slow down and put the feelers out to the public, who out there would be willing to come and take some of the incredibly high quality virgin redwood timbers that you know are in that 1890 house? Please, I'm just asking to slow down. I don't understand the rush, and I don't understand the ecological effects to just splinter something like this for the sake of just getting it done. I'm asking you to please not approve this, put it on hold, and find out if there is anyone out there that would come and do some salvage work for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Board comment, discussion, motions?
Well, one of my questions is, why was there a backhoe out there if we haven't even, is that really something that was happening?
It was. In order to obtain a demolition permit, the sanitation district requires the laterals be abandoned. And so that was done, and that was the work that
I should know
our
that.
neighbor was referencing.
Yeah, and I'll just comment, you know, we're certainly resource oriented. I mean, the staff, you know, that's what we're about. So we look into all those items, whether it's it's feasible and makes sense to recycle things like this, not just this house, but a lot of the stuff we do, metal, whatever. And, you know, a couple things. First of all, as you can see up the picture up here, that's recent pine, because any of the wood in there had been, and there's picture after picture. It's not, that's not redwood, that's pine. So they...
Yeah, Doug fir.
Doug fir, thank you. The value, or these claims of redwood, is not accurate in the context. But also, we looked at having people come in regardless, and the liability cost to have people that come in that don't have an actual business is quite high. And then people who do it for a living would charge us. They weren't going to do it for free. It was a cost. So we look at it from our ratepayer point of view, and it didn't pan out there either. So.
And do you know if the people doing the demolition reutilize anything that they find that is reusable, or?
Yeah, in this case, I don't believe they're going to plan to do any of that.
Okay.
Thank you for
It's
looking
in
into
pretty
that.
bad shape.
Thanks for checking
That's what
into
we're
that,
about.
Ron.
Yeah.
I'll make the motions, 3.
Okay, I'll second. Two of them are not requiring a roll call vote, but we can do roll call for all three, I think.
Director Lather?
Yes.
Director Daniels?
Yes.
Director Jaffe?
Yes.
And President Leahy?
Yes. The next item is
6A.
to federal legislative assistance and funding support.
Okay, item 6.8 is a continuation of an item that first came to the board in May, which is to seek some assistance with legislative and funding support. As you know, that the district is, you know, one of our mainstays is not just environmental, but also fiscal responsibility. And in doing projects such as the Pure Water Soquel project, but also any project under our community water plan, as well as infrastructure, we are always looking at ways that we can reduce ratepayer costs in terms of seeking outside funds through grants and loans. So with that, the district did solicit proposals for professional services to provide federal legislative legislative assistance and support. We put a package out. We did receive 7 proposals, and we had a selection committee that reviewed the proposals and shortlisted 3 firms to interview. The interview committee consisted of staff as well as 2 board members. We were joined by Director Rochelle Lather and Director Carla Christensen and 2 of our consultants, and we did interview 3 firms that are included in our packet. And the selection committee did choose Capital Edge. This is a firm that had a lot of knowledge with issues related to those in Santa Cruz County. They do represent several firms here and several agencies. They had a lot of knowledge, and they also provided a very competitive budget for the services that they would provide. So we are proposing that we accept their proposal and execute a contract for not to exceed $42,000 a year, which would include $3,500 a month. That proposal does include that they would be in contact with the district staff on a monthly basis in terms of watching legislative actions in Washington, D.C., coordinating any efforts if we were to go out in Washington, D.C. to meet with a delegation out there, and also to come and present to the board at least twice a year. If I probably should stop and see if anybody wants to add anything.
I'll add that the consultant that was selected it helps several agencies in Santa Cruz County right now, so they have a knowledge of that. And those agencies for which they represent said they provide cost-effective services for them. I will also add that Director Christensen, who is not here tonight, did email me, and I don't have the email in front of me, but she basically says she supported, and maybe Rochelle can add to it because you were there for the flavor of what she said, but what she sent to me was that she favored the motion that was up here, so that you've got her in contact. She can't vote, obviously, but I wanted to convey her sentiments.
You mentioned it's a 5-year contract, but I think, aren't we only committing ourselves for 1 year?
That's what I had asked too.
Right. So as you can see right here on this part right here, it's a 5-year contract renewable at the end of each fiscal year, subject to the availability of funds and the performance. So as we bring, every year the board has to approve our budget. We will get feedback from the board. We'll look at our staff as we develop our budget and appropriate funds if we're satisfied with this.
If we ever don't need to continue, we just don't put it in the budget,
Right.
and therefore we get out.
Yeah, I just didn't see it on their paperwork, the renewable portion of it.
That part was part of our scope of work when we put it out there. And we can make sure that we include that
But
in
on
the
their
contract.
fees for service, I just don't see it written there.
We can include that in the
I want to
contract.
make sure that's in there. Yeah. Rochelle, did you want something to add, anything about the choice of this particular company, or? No? Okay.
Seems like ages ago. Every company was qualified, and this company just seemed like they had a better grasp on our issues that are local and a familiarity with, actually, I think, the district's decisions over the last few years. So they just seem like a good fit for us.
Okay. Any public comment on this item?
Thank you. Tom and I were just puzzling over why do you want to spend this much money on this? Becky Steinbruner, I mean, I'm not one of your customers, but man, if I were, I really would be here asking you questions. I remember when this idea was floated with the board, and it seemed like the board was pretty lukewarm. And then, boom, here it is, and you're asking your customers to spend up to $44,000 a year to have a friend in Washington monitoring legislation. And to me, that seems like that's what your general manager should be doing, not in Washington, D.C., but watching over what's going on and letting you know. And it's a real puzzle to me that your board would, when you're looking at how to save money, how to keep your rates down, that you would consider spending this much money on just having a friend in Washington. It's a puzzle to me, and I think your customers should know about this. Thank you.
I'll make a comment on that because I was very skeptical initially, but the only part that is valuable to me is just that, not the legislative portion so much, but the assistance with gaining funding. So if you spend $3,500 a month and you end up getting a
Up to
$1
10
million
or, 10 or $20 million.
grant or multiple $1 million grant to help fund something that otherwise the customers would be funding, then it's that kind of investment. That's the only reason I consider this.
Yeah, and I'll add, we consulted other consultants and got input on this, and it's exactly that. What it boiled down to is that it's basically, they said it's a foolish investment not to make. If you want to help your customers and help your ratepayers, that this small amount, the risk versus the reward is in favor of doing it.
Okay, yes, sir.
Yes, Gary Lindstrom, Aptos. What was the difference in the projected costs of each one of these firms? Was this particular one at the high end or at the low end?
I think you said it was like half of most of the others, right?
This was the lowest of the 7, and the highest was $10,000 a month.
Okay. And in the process, do they do all the research for you as to whether or not these programs will fit the county or the water district?
Yeah. I mean, they're supposed to have a knowledge of all the potential funding sources and then be able to tell us exactly what the best chances are, is what I understand.
Yeah, you'll get a chance to meet them. They come down and they learn our situation, understand us more. Plus, they already know a little bit about us to begin with, and they certainly know about Santa Cruz County and its some of its general issues. But we asked them that specifically. How are you going to help us? Well, it starts off with a couple-day interview, maybe come to a board meeting too at the beginning just to kick it off, so you get the feel for them.
But it's not just talking to us about opportunities, it's finding people who make decisions on those opportunities and telling them our story.
Right.
And we don't have access to all those people, and we don't know them. This person or this group, they know specific people that make decisions, and they can at least tell them our story and why we're a good fit for some program that they're funding. And we don't have that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a big world.
Are these weekly reports, bi-weekly, monthly, bi-monthly, semi-annual, annual
wait for the board
reports?
to.
I think the staff
They
report.
just get in touch with you when they find
I
something?
think the staff report mentions monthly.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Tom Stumbaugh, Aptos. It would seem to me that all of this wonderful stuff would be good to be included in your What's on Tap publication. Hey, tell the people we're spending this much money, but because we're spending this much money, we're getting this much more back. Inform the public of what these things are doing for them. Make it your job to see to it that the consumer here realizes that their money is being well spent.
Sure.
Yeah, good idea.
Thank you.
I think that'd be a good. The one we got from to do our analysis of the chemistry was what, 150,000 or something, and then the $1 million that we're in line for. And
Right. So
to show people that this is actually starting to work, that we're actually funding these things that otherwise they'd have to pay for.
Right. Yeah, and that's a great idea. I think it would be a great feature story for an upcoming What's on Tap. By that time, we should have a little bit more firmer understanding of where we are with the Prop 1 grant, but we have heard word that we should be getting a letter in the next month or so.
Right.
And those were investments in people helping us get that as well.
Large return on the investment.
So I'm skeptical about this still. There is a risk involved. There could be a high reward. I'm more comfortable with it being year to year, so we can evaluate. But of all the, I think it's 5 different, 6, 7, 8 different tasks. Really, task 3, assist the Soquel Creek Water District in securing the maximum amount of federal funding possible. To me, that's
Job number 1.
Mhm.
it.
Yeah, I think number 3 and number 4, which talks about kind of the deliverables of what we can expect from the consultant, which was a question from somebody in the public. You know, getting those reports, understanding, you know, that information, bringing it back to us so we can convey to you.
Yeah, for me, it's 3 and then 4 is way behind. Because we're a relatively small agency. And I think, yes, we might have an effect on legislative programs, but I don't think that's our real task. Our task is to for our ratepayers to secure the maximum amount of federal funding possible.
Right.
Exactly.
In fact, I learned a lot about doing this when we met with the Bureau of Reclamation to hear how their process works, and it's very Byzantine. You would expect that they'd allocate some chunk of money, and they'd give certain amount to the east and certain amount to the south, and then that each area would divide up into states, and then the best projects would. No, that's not how it happens. They actually sometimes make these decisions in Washington, you know, in the House of Representatives or the Senate. And so if you don't have any contacts there, you just are not part of the process. And so that's why you need someone like they're representing it, because if people don't know you and don't know your projects, you just don't get on the list.
Yeah, a local water agency, Point and Case, has had a representative like this, and over, I don't know, about a decade, they got about $20 million. So we're trying to follow that suit, but without that person helping them like this, they wouldn't have got that.
It's too bad it's that way,
But it is.
but the reality is,
And things are changing with the different administration, and so it's nice, you know, I think for us, because we're small, to have somebody that has that familiarity in Washington, D.C. I think another story that we heard from a consultant was, if we're going to be trying to seek federal funding, we need to make sure that we have a Title 16 compliant project that needs to then go through in SqCWD and NEPA. So the federal side is NEPA, and you need to go through that process. They told us 2 different stories of one agency that didn't have any type of federal assistance. It took 6 months. One that had federal assistance, it took like less than a week.
okay. Any other comments?
I would make both motions.
Okay. I'll second. Like I said, I wish we didn't have to do it, but I think it's still in the best interest of our customers to do it this way. So, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? All right, motion carries unanimously. Next is just an information item on water audit. Didn't know if there's...
Yeah, we're fortunate tonight to have Carla James with us, our Water Quality Program Coordinator, to present about the water audit. She has a couple slides to give you a feel for what that is. And Christine is up in Sacramento tonight. That's why she's not here, and Taj covered for some of her items. But thank you, Carla.
Good work, by the way.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm pleased to present the 2016 water audit tonight. Bear with me for 1 second here. So, I'm going to present this as pretty much a broad overview of just the basics of the water audit. The state went a step further this year and decided to have each water agency, water district, submit a validated water audit to the state by October 1st, and they put together a program, water loss technical assistance program, to help push that along. So our water audit has been validated. We don't have a certificate yet in hand, but it has been validated by the technical assistance program representatives. Sorry. Oh, there we go. I just want to show you an overview of a basic water balance. On the left side, the total water supply, and then as you move to the right, how much authorized consumption, how much water loss. The main focus for the water audit with the Department of Water Resources is the non-revenue water, which is represented on the far side in the right. Our own water audit balance looks like this. Those numbers are hard to read. Our non-revenue water percentage ended up at 9.7%. If you take out the polo grounds water consumption, which is metered but unbilled, then our non-revenue water would be 8.9%.
You see how much in there is, for example, main breaks, which are known losses, but...
So we do have a tracking system that we keep track of known quantities or estimated quantities of main breaks, service leaks, and those would be represented in the real loss category at the bottom for leakages on distribution mains and service connections and overflows if we had them at our storage tanks. And the way that this water audit works is kind of in reverse. There's a bunch of inputs that we put in for apparent losses, and so the real losses is actually a subtracted value from the taking away what the apparent losses are. So our real losses show up as 68 million gallons on here, and that's we only have tracked a fraction of that in what our losses are when we track them from the field. So it's kind of they call this like a top-down water audit as opposed to a bottom-up water audit. So kind of it's kind of like you start from the left on the water balance and you move your way to the other side. So you start with your system input volume and then how much you exported and what your authorized consumption was, and it kind of breaks it down. The Water Research Foundation has actually put together a project where they looked at real losses as what they call a water loss component evaluation, and it's really kind of nitty-gritty, and you get into a lot of how big is this main for how many miles, and you look at everything, and it's really more involved than this level 1 water audit that we've done this year. So another output or a deliverable from the water audit is the dashboard from the water audit software program, and this is just a kind of another way of looking at the water audit balance. And that non-revenue water on the right-hand side, that large orange bar, is actually that would be our real losses. So that would be our leaks and leakage on distribution systems and service connections. They also, as a deliverable, give you system attributes and performance indicators, and this breaks down actual some monetary values. They give you some financial indicators of a percentage of how much your non-revenue water would be as valued at your variable production cost, excuse me. So that would be like how much your chemicals and your pumping energy would be. And so that we came out at 1.4%. There you go on that. Oh, that's much better. One thing I do want to point out is the infrastructure leakage index is a unitless value that is a value of 1 would be the current annual real losses divided by something that would be like unavoidable annual real losses, and so that would give you a value of 1. Where we came out, our current annual real losses are actually less than what would be considered unavoidable, so we have a ILI of less than 1, 0.74. Here's another way to look at our performance indicators with comparison with Georgia. Unfortunately, because this program is new and all of the water audits don't have to be in until October 1st, we don't have a median for the California submittals. So we pulled the Georgia medians. Georgia is one of the leading states that was actually ahead of California in putting together water audit validation. So we took their median values and compared them with ours. And one last thing that the water audit software will do will give you 3 priority areas for improvement. Our first one is the volume from our own sources, and that would be metering our production meters. Right now, they're not always in optimal configurations for getting that most accurate metering. Customer metering inaccuracies, our customer service field crew and the field crew leader and the supervisor are going to put together a metering program where it's not just, right now, the meters are only pulled and checked when there's a question on them, and they're going to put together a more robust program to actually do random checks. And then in the third one is build metered consumption, and that kind of goes along with the customer metering inaccuracies. So those are our 3 priority areas for improvement. Are there any questions?
I was under the impression that our customers' meters are fairly accurate every time they've been pulled. That I can recall they're astoundingly accurate. Is that a misconception on my part?
No, there was a meter overhaul where we put in all the AMR meters from about 2008 to 2016, I believe. And so they're fairly new, and the manufacturers, within that standard, they kind of guarantee them for that length of time. But I think more of why this showed up in our priority area for improvement is more based on the fact that I didn't explain, but every input that you give to the water audit software, you need to give a data validity grade for each category. And for instance, for customer metering inaccuracies, we could only give it a data validity grade of 3 out of 10, 10 being the best. And the reason for that is because we don't have that metering program where we pull random meters and test them for accuracy. So that, and because the meters that are pulled are usually just the suspect meters. So that was the reason for that.
On your 162 table, you have customer metering inaccuracies, 9.296 million gallons, and that's a positive number, but I could imagine that could also be a negative number. I mean, you could be overreading or you could be underreading, and I'm wondering why you picked positive there for that. Do you have any data that says why it should be a positive number?
Okay, hang on with me 1 second. Customer metering inaccuracies, I believe.
As you look
It's the
that
water
up,
balance,
I'll mention something.
Go ahead, Ron.
All right, you go ahead and look. Yeah, we made a conscious decision since we had new meters not to do a full implementation testing program to save money, because every one we pulled out, we never found one that tested outside the parameter except 1 meter, and that was because it was busted by tree roots, so it just didn't even flow. So it was just a logical decision. I think what we're seeing now, since some years have passed, it probably makes sense to go and implement that program and see how.
I have no problem with that. I'm just wondering.
Yeah,
because a meter could be overreading or underreading, and I'm wondering why we picked the positive number.
Right, and I was responding to Dr. Jaffe's question. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead. No.
To answer Director Daniel's question, so the reason that we picked a positive value of 1% is because as the meters age, they tend to, or they're less accurate. They're not calculating as much volume. They get,
I got it. Okay.
So that's why we.
So they tend to err on that side.
They err on the side of not calculating the correct amount on the side of the customer.
Right.
Yes. So.
Against the district, right?
Yeah, favor the customer.
And that's the reason for the positive 1% value.
Nice to know.
All right, questions? Thank you, Carla.
Thank you.
Well done.
Yeah,
you.
nicely done. Then 6.10 is the Cornwell tank. Sounds like it needs it.
Yeah, I don't know if you looked at the attachment number 3.
Yeah.
It is in need of a recoat, inside and out. And so, fortunately, it doesn't have coal tar inside. So it's a relatively straightforward project, except for some of the safety upgrades that we do anticipate putting in. There's also a active mixing system that will be installed on the inlet. So we hope that you support this project.
Any comment from the public on this one?
Before we make motions?
I'll make both motions.
All second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It states a roll call vote. I
Oh,
don't
roll
know
call.
if that's needed or not.
It is a resolution, you're right.
Dr. Lather?
Yes.
Director Daniels?
Yes.
Director Jaffe?
Yes.
And President Lahue?
Yes. And then the final item is written communication. I think Ms. Steinbrenner wanted to comment on that, yes, or public comment on that?
Thank you. Yes, Becky Steinbruner. I think Mr. Stumbaugh also has comment. I, again, would really like to ask that you, regarding my TCP letters, I'm glad that you did take that well offline. So thank you for doing that. Regarding some of the comments in here from residents regarding the West Annex site, I am concerned about those residents there. I did take a tour of the advanced water purified plant over in San Jose, and the noise is amazing. And I don't think you're really, I think I'd like to see some decibel testing there, because these people are definitely going to hear anything like that. It's very loud, very high-pitched, and disruptive. And I did submit a letter that isn't in here, and it's asking about my question that I posed and was not answered regarding all of the water pipes within the Aptos Village project. They were all dug up. And I just want to know why that was done. And I did submit a letter. It isn't in the packet, but I would like that answered. Thank you.
Okay. Staff available to answer that question for?
Oh, sure.
I'm curious too.
Okay, they were. We discovered that the contractor installing the pipes did not follow the manufacturer's instructions, and so they're just redoing those pipes.
At the expense of the contractor?
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any other comments on written communication?
Tom Stumbaugh, Aptos. I'm just a plebe at what we're doing here. I'm kind of getting used to the way things are done. But I wrote a letter addressed to the board of directors, and 2 days after I submitted that letter, I received an answer, or a letter from Mr. Duncan regarding my letter.
It's in the packet.
Yes, I know. I know it's in there. But it was interesting to me that I write a letter to the board, and within 2 days you send me not necessarily an answer, but a letter based on my letter. So I assume that when I submitted it, it went directly to your desk. These people, the directors, as far as I know, before you wrote this letter, hadn't even seen my letter.
And if we see his response and it's not good, we'll override his response.
But we want to.
Saves us time that way.
We've asked him to, get a response back to people more quickly, and sometimes it's a month between board meetings.
Yeah, I understand that. But my concern was about a water connection in the Aptos Village project. these people, workers there had a hose connected to it, and it didn't look like a legal connection to me.
And
Yes, I read
he
read
and
the
staff
letter.
knows much more about that than we do. So
Right.
we learned by looking at the response as well.
Well, okay, he says here that he had 2 days, and he says, we have investigated and are taking appropriate action. What was the investigation and what's the appropriate action?
That's my response. I don't want to go into it any deeper unless the board would like to direct me
I
to
think
do
it's
that.
fine to go ahead and answer.
Okay. So we were fortunate to have Ms. Steinbrenner identify a hole in the ground, and we looked at it. It didn't have a meter in there. We didn't suspect any foul play. The usage for that location where the meter is has been paid for. If people, it's due to be removed at a future date. If anybody would like to use water from there, then because they've continued to pay on the service, then they can use water on it. We may or may not put a backflow in, as was suggested. That depends on what the usage is and what engineering determines.
The hose was hooked up to a pipe. There was
Okay,
no
so
sign
that's
of
it.
any kind of metering.
Sir, well, if maybe perhaps you you can give him a more detailed written response so that we don't use the meeting time for this one item, okay? That was his response, and so maybe he can give you a more detailed response, or if you have more discussion. But
Yeah, I had
think that's
3
enough.
questions I wanted answered in the letter that I wrote to the
Okay.
board, and none of those questions were answered. So review the letter and answer my questions. Send it
Well,
to
let
me
me
in
point
paper if
this
you
out.
want.
You have the right to public comment. You don't have the right to ask any arbitrary question that can require who knows how much research to answer your question and get a response. I mean, I can call up, Jerry Brown and ask him, something that would take, 10 staff people a year to investigate, and I cannot do that because that would bring government to a halt.
And it
So
also-
you can ask your question and as part of a public comment, but you don't necessarily get a response because that could require a lot of work on his part. And if he doesn't need to know it, the staff doesn't need to know it, we don't need to know it, and we don't spend the money to do that.
So the idea is I should not write letters
You
to
can
the
write
board.
letters, you can ask questions, just don't demand an answer. You might get an answer, you might not get an answer. If it's not in the best interest of the district to spend the time to find the answer to your question, you won't get it.
Yeah, if everybody asked, questions about everything, we'd be spending all our time answering questions. But I mean, he said it's been taken care of. It was not, he appreciated you letting him know it's been taken care of. And so I think we're done. And the meeting is adjourned.
Closed session.
Oh, to a closed session.
Exactly.
So what I wanted to know is, was that a trigger like
Not satisfying to him.
No, it won't.
Wow.
You're snacking?
I don't think we used to have a secretary that had them in her house.
So this is our last night.
Frustrating.
Yeah.
May I ask another question?
Yes.
Well, I mean,
It's like Superman trying to fly.
they don't like or they don't understand.
I don't know what he was screaming.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.